going to be navigating to the Forms tab and then Form List. And that's where you see all these forms that have already been created in here for you guys. So a couple of things I want to talk about before we create a new form together. We have some action items or action buttons over here on the right-hand side of the screen. We can delete, you'll notice any of these forms. There's a few, though, that we cannot delete. And the reason why is the ones that are not able to be deleted have a form submission. So once a form has been submitted, once it's been taken, you can no longer delete that form. The reason why is our forms can collect information from your members. That information is stored in your members' profiles. And so if we deleted the form submission, all of that information that you collected on your members it's going to be deleted en masse. So to prevent you from deleting information en masse, we just take away the ability for you to delete a form that's been submitted. Does that make sense?
It does, although that only means that you can delete a form that you have modified and submitted. You obviously can't just delete accidentally one of the main forms, right? One of the templates.
I mean, you could if you clicked, delete next to it, but if there's
what does that
any
mean?
form
So the ones
submission,
that we can still delete means no one's used it. Is that why we can still delete it? So there's no data? Is that the...
Exactly. So you'll notice
the
like
once we've
submission.
used a form, we can't delete it, which is just to save us from ourselves.
Yeah, I can
That's
submit
summary,
something,
exactly right.
some like blank info into one of the templates just to make sure no one accidentally deletes any of the templates.
Yeah, I think
that's
that
a good
would be
idea,
good.
Todd. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really smart. And you can see those form submissions. So for example, we have, we'll just use the one at the top, 4 form submissions for the August 2017 chapter meeting. So you'll notice we can't delete this form because form submissions have been provided. Now, there's 2 different ways we can view those form submissions. So we have the ability to click on this number, which shows us who submitted. We can select the submission ID. We can even view everything that they've provided in that form submission.
So this, are we looking at actual, in this case, we're looking at RSVPs for the Beverly Hills chapter meeting. Is that what we're looking at? This might be for Alexandra. This might be a question.
Yeah, that's what that is.
Yeah, okay,
so
this
only
is for
4 people RSVP'd for the July meeting, is that?
This is the August meeting.
For the August meeting, okay.
This is under the new site, okay. Because I remember you mentioning, Al, that there were 3 people who had RSVP'd under the new site. So here it is, okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. And so a couple of things you can do. We could tag all of these form submissions if you needed to bring them into an Excel spreadsheet. So you could tag those form submissions, use your actions drop down, and export those tag submissions. And we can even select exactly what fields we want in that Excel document that we're exporting. So we don't have to have all of this information, right? If we don't need all of it, we can just select the fields that we need to look at. So you're not having to sort through the columns that are not relevant to the information you need when trying to get the information you need. So if I go back to that form list, so one way you can look at the form submissions is by selecting or clicking on that number. The other way is by selecting View Registrants. Now, the big difference to me between these 2 is, let's say that I'm coming to your event, and I'm also bringing my friend. Did we just gain somebody? I don't know.
Like Alexandra's on twice now.
Oh, okay, that might have been it. I wonder, Alexandra, can you still hear me?
Yeah, I was just switching from phone to laptop. I'm still here.
So the biggest difference between selecting the number 4 and selecting the View Registrant is looking at number 4. So let's say that I registered for RSVP for an event, and maybe I can also RSVP guests. So I'm bringing my coworker Brittany to the event. If we looked at me and her submission by clicking the number 4, we're going to be on the same row in the database. So if you need a total count of how many people are coming to the event, you wouldn't want to use the number. You would actually want to use this View Registrant. It's going to show you every single person and the the oh my goodness, and the guest that they've registered. So it's going to show you both. I might have gotten that backwards, actually. That's interesting. I'm looking at something for a second. I think Barbara, Renee, and Henry. These are two totally, oh, Henry and Eddie.
It only shows two registrants, and we should have had 4.
Yeah, and also, just I noticed that Barbara Schwartz was on the that last list, and she had been saying that she was having trouble registering for events. So I don't know why it might come up in submissions but not registrants. Maybe they didn't click yes.
Yeah, it's because they didn't technically register for the event. So what happened was she submitted a blank form. Okay. Yeah, and I think I already fixed this, and I'll show you what I did. We talked about this previously. So she won't be able to the reason she's probably having a problem now is because the system's kind of like checking her off as somebody who's already submitted the form, and so we probably don't have it checked to allow multiple submissions. Yeah, we'll look at that together to prevent this from happening again in the future. That's exactly what it was. Is those people submitted blank forms. So yeah, so these are the totals.
Quick question on that. Sorry to interrupt, but does that mean that in the future, if anyone wants to register for an event, they actually have to submit a form, or are they going to be? Will it be something like on the old website where you just click, or do you click and then you're brought to the form? I'm just a little unclear about that.
So you click.
Alexandra. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I made a link on the calendar that says RSVP now, and that link takes you to the form.
Okay.
And so people who already have accounts with Brewer Professionals need to log in, and then for chapter meetings, it should just be a quick, are you attending? Yes, and then they keep going. For other things, it'll be more options.
Got you. So pretty easy. So it sounds like at least once it's all done, it'll be pretty foolproof. And Barbara, someone like Barbara or me won't be able to fill out the form but not actually get registered because you'll have to probably say yes in order for things to go through.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's how the Beverly Hills one was. So maybe once everyone also gets that video of how to navigate the new website, they'll realize that it's a kind of a different process now of actually having to click yes.
Okay.
And so, yeah, so what this is showing us is that 4 people submitted a form, but 2 of those people didn't technically register. So this is only going to show us the actual registrant. So my favorite thing about using the event registrants list versus that number that you can select is that you are going to see in separate rows not only the original registrant, but also the guest. So if you needed a total count, and I'm bringing a guest, in this list you're going to see me and my guest name, so the total count is 2. By selecting the number, the total count would be 1. It would only show you my registration. Does the difference between those two make sense? That's kind of what I was trying to get at. A couple of other items that we have in here. So if there's, just like using those templates, you can copy a form, so that'll allow you to copy templates to continually use them. Edit is going to bring us into the form builder, which we're going to do here in just a second. And then you can take this form. This would be like Bob calls and he says, hey, I really want to come to the event, just don't have time to register. Can you please RSVP me? And Alexander can go right into here, find Bob, check his name, proceed as him, and then just take the form for him really fast. One little thing that I always like to point out is there's this kind of little hidden checkbox down here in the bottom left-hand corner. So let's say Bob calls you on a Monday and you just don't get to it until Wednesday afternoon, and you don't want him to know that maybe it took you 2 days. You can just prevent confirmation emails from going out, so Bob's not notified that he's just now being registered. Okay. Obviously, we're going to have a lot of forms in here. A creative solution is if there's a form that you no longer need to use, you can always put these in front of it because, as you notice, these are listed alphabetically. So that'll drop them down to the very bottom of the list. You can also use the search bar in the top right-hand corner to help you find the form that you're looking for specifically. If we wanted to create a new form, we're just going to select Create New Form, which is this button up here in the top left-hand corner. You can put in the form name and then the form description. Now, these items are internal, so this is not what your members are going to see. This is only what you will see for the form. So it's just to allow you to know what, to kind of be able to determine what the form is used for.
Is there a way to sort it so that, you know, because, so for instance, Todd is the Beverly Hills chapter leader. We have 18 or 15 chapters. Is there a way for him to be able to just kind of see the Beverly Hills stuff easily? Or is it like, because once this thing gets really full, it's going to be hard to see how many, I mean, it's going to be hard to get any data from this thing. You got to have to pick and choose between tons. I mean, just tons of forms, because we have 15 chapters with at least one meeting a month.
Great question.
So what I would recommend is putting whatever your chapter name is into the file or into the form name, similar to BP Exchange, right? So we have 4 BP Exchange forms. And if I just search Exchange, it's just going to show me the ones that are applying to the BP Exchange. Same for you guys. If it's a specific form just used for your chapter, I would put your chapter name, and then when you come in here, you can just search for Beverly Hills, and all of the forms that have Beverly Hills in them are going to pop up.
Okay.
Yeah, right now it's BH. So I've done that already, but just with the abbreviations instead of with the full name.
You have BH.
That's
okay.
Good. Okay, that's good.
Okay. And by the way we've had, just since you brought up Exchange, we've had it, I think, so anyone, even someone who's not a BP member, could post something on the Exchange. Is that still going to be the case? And if so, does anyone posting something on the Exchange, are they, obviously they're not going to be going into the back end of the site like we are. So I assume that they'll be able to go to Exchange somewhere on the website, and it'll just take them to the form just like the RSVP process would. Is that the case?
Yeah, so I'm trying to set that up through forums, and it's something that I need to also talk a little more in depth with Adrian about, because I'm not able to just figure out on my own how to do it. So maybe it'll be covered in one of these trainings. But the final product is that I'll be moderating all of the posts to BP Exchange, so I'll be able to go in and approve things like on the last website, and then that'll be visible to everyone else. And so Catherine created these forms to kind of streamline submissions. So we need to figure out what would be the best way, whether using these forms or just the old way where people would post something and then I'd approve it or not approve it.
Got it.
Okay. So going back to creating a new form, we would add in the name, the description, and then depending on what type of form we're creating, we'll determine which of these checkboxes down here we're selecting. If the form is used for membership, we're obviously going to select the membership application box. If it's an event registration form, we're going to check the event registration box.
Okay.
We can use a form for both, or we could use the form for neither. So if it's something that's not for membership and not for event registration, we're going to check neither box and just use a general section.
Is creating this kind of form something that will be the responsibility, say, of chapter leaders, or will it be, say, Al's responsibility? Like, to give you an example, last night I was talking with somebody from the Santa Monica chapter about maybe collaborating with Beverly Hills to do a fundraising event for the Bruin Shelter, for example. So let's say that we decided that we would do some fundraising event somewhere. Would it be my responsibility or the chapter leader of Santa Monica's responsibility to create the registration form, you know, as normal practice, or would general best practices be going to Alexandra and saying, this is what we want to do? So how do those new event forms get created and placed on this website?
I think what's best would be to do it through me, just because part of monthly I'd be copying all the chapter meeting ones to make sure that we have those, and just so that it's one person going in there and we don't have, so just so it's more consistent, I think it would be best. I don't know, Ken, if you have a different opinion.
Yeah, and we need to make sure, again, when you do these, when you have these plans, that we go through the process of immediately letting, at a minimum, Al know, but really to get Tiffany and Matt Crisafulli in the loop, because again, it's like if we put too many events on that, and they collide with UCLA, they collide with other chapters. From a fundraising standpoint, obviously we have this organization-wide commitment for our scholarship, which we still, so there's a lot of we don't want to conflict and compete. So I think these things need to be discussed at the chapter leader calls before you just kind of decide. Because too much is really, it's actually, it really is a burden. Like our members go like, man, there's just too much, and
it can be self-defeating.
It's self-defeating. It gets annoying, and they don't want to do it. So you think it's going to be for a great cause or whatever, and I think it really needs to be discussed at the chapter leader call just so that everyone's kind of on the same page and knows what's coming.
I think that really makes a lot of sense, and so maybe the procedure should always be maybe going to Alexandra as a clearinghouse, and Alexandra will immediately know that this is something that has to be brought to Tiffany's to Tiffany and Matt's attention or whatever. But to always make sure that something like that does get brought to leadership attention. That makes perfect sense. And maybe there needs to be an explicit best practice that goes out to chapter leaders, but maybe even something on the website, or maybe even a notification on the forum. I'm just thinking of people who may forget to do this, like me. A way to, it's an automatic way that we can't, mess things up.
Yeah, I think we should start with the next chapter leader call just to kind of talk about that. And I've heard many complaints from our members where it's like the calendar gets too full. And so we don't want to do that. And so I think at a minimum, we should start with kind of the chapter leader discussion, just on general about putting new events on there, and then getting I think if it's not too much, I don't want to give more work to you, Alexandra, but if you feel like you could be at least the initial point, and then get it to Tiffany and Matt, so that it can be a board discussion. And then getting Sandy involved at UCLA so that it's all coordinated.
Right.
That makes sense.
No, definitely. Yeah. So we can just have that. I'll make the calendar events and I'll make the forms. And so before you're even able to put it on the calendar, you think, oh, I have to tell Alexandra, and then I'll spread that out.
Perfect.
Okay.
Awesome. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and create a new form, just a test form, by selecting the Save button. Before I keep moving forward, any additional questions kind of on that profile list, how to access form submissions or create exports from those form submissions?
Nope.
Okay. Awesome. So Alexandra, I don't want to spend time going over things that you've already used, so I might go over it briefly. So like the way I would typically do this is go over each of the sections that make up the form on the right-hand side. So this right-hand side column is kind of acting as the rough draft. And then the left-hand side, we've got 3 different tabs up here. Form settings would be general settings that apply to the form as a whole. If you want to add form elements, you would use the Add Form Elements tab, and these are broken up into the different types of elements we can add. And then anytime we select properties of the sections or one of the fields on the form, it's going to give us element properties. So these would be customizations we could make to specific sections or fields on the form. Are there any specific pieces you got stuck on, Alexandra, when you were making forms?
Yeah, could we actually, I think what might be more helpful for me is to go back to the form list and look at one of the ones that I've already created, because I had a specific question on one of those. It would be the BP Sangria event. So for the pricing for this event, that was the kind of where I got stuck, was on pricing. So we have different pricing, and I know I was able to set price levels by member type, but one question I had, if a member is trying to register a guest, would they be paying the member price or the guest price?
So if a member is trying to register a guest, they're going to see the same pricing that the member sees as when they're logged in. So if you have member type pricing set up, it's going to recognize the member type pricing for that specific member. So if you have guest pricing that you need to use, you would need to create a second selection set option listing the guest pricing. Does that make sense, or do you want to go through that together?
Yeah, just because I want to make sure that members see the right one if they go in.
Yeah, and something I wanted to go ahead and point out is I mentioned earlier the name that you call the form is not what your members will see. So your members are only going to see the names on each of the tabs beginning with each section. So like they wouldn't see BP Sangria event, they would see like event section. Which isn't really going to tell them anything, right? This event section title. It doesn't tell them what they're registering for. So we always want to make sure we update that event section title by selecting the properties and updating this in the event name. Now, this is also what reflects on that forms dashboard, the event dashboard on the home page of the site, and then the event date. So is this the correct date for the event?
No.
So we would want to also update this.
Yeah.
What is it, September 14th, right?
Yeah.
Whoops. Now, one other thing, requiring at least one registrant will prevent people from being able to bypass the form. So like what Barbara did when she bypassed the form, she just hit submit. If we make this required, if somebody tried to hit submit, it's going to say, I'm sorry, this requires at least one registrant for the form. So you really always want to turn this on for an event because it'll prevent people from sitting in blank forms.
Super helpful. Okay, cool.
So now that we've kind of got our form looking the way it needs to, we can create, we can add the selection set to add pricing and then set up member type pricing. To briefly review these different types of elements that we can add to our form, built-ins are going to be things like your built-in attributes, physical address, email address, phone number, name, so on. Custom attributes are going to be any of those custom items that we set up together. The big thing about built-ins and custom attributes is anytime a member fills these fields out, that information is going to be stored in your member's profile. So you're able to take that information and save it. Form fields will not be saved in the member's profile. They will only be in the form submission itself. So you would want to use a form field to set up pricing because you don't need to know that somebody paid, $55 to come to the Sangria event 10 years from now, right? You really only need it to create the invoice and to know to get a payment. So that's why we would want to use a form field instead of a built-in or custom attribute. Does that make sense? Or not really?
No, it makes sense.
So if we wanted to create pricing, how much are your members having to pay to come to the Sangria event?
$15.
So we could say, I would like to attend, goodness gracious, the BP Sangria event. And then we would want to make sure we update the export name because that's going to be the column header for the export. And then we need to make it required because they have to select yes, otherwise why are they taking this form? And then you make it a price field by turning on the price field. And then we're going to add our selections, option limits, and base prices. So we're going to say yes. And if they choose yes, then they have to pay $15. Now this limit is if you only had 20 seats available at the Sangria event, you could put in the number 20. And what that means is once 20 people have registered, nobody else can register for the event.
Okay.
Now, how much do guests have to pay to? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. You know what? I think you're about to go to what I was going to ask about.
Okay. If a guest was to register, how much would they have to pay?
$30?
So we would put in the $30 pricing. So members would see 15, guests would see 30. And then what we would want to do here, and we might even instead want to say like, yes, I would like to register myself, or yes, I would like to register a guest. And then we've got the member type pricing piece that we can set up. So if I select member type pricing, this allows us to bring in different columns. So do affiliates and then members pay different amounts than like prospects and public? So how's the member type pricing broken up?
Prospects would pay the guest price. Everyone else would pay the member price.
So prospects would pay 30.
Yeah. Okay.
And then we wouldn't have to set up the other members, but we could choose affiliate, member, and admin.
Mm-hmm.
We can add this column, and it makes a different column, and we can say 15.
Why do you have 30 for both of them?
Because prospects would still pay 30 because they're not members.
Exactly. Does that make sense?
Well, you've got the 30, you got the base price of 15, that's a member, but then it says review and edit is 30. Why would the member is only going to pay 15, right?
So that's for that column is for prospect / public type accounts.
Oh, I see. Okay, I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we kind of set up a table.
When you created that second selection piece for the yes, I would like to register a guest, and the off chance someone wanted to bring 2 guests, would they be able to bring 2 guests, or
they would?
So
what we want to
does that only allow them to buy one?
They could bring multiple guests. So, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So we can turn on in the property section allow guest registrants, and you can. They're gonna see this register guest button at the bottom of their registration, and they can click it as many times as they want, and it's just gonna add more, like a whole other section where they'll have to fill out the guest information, and then they would have to select yes, I'd like to register a guest, and they could select that as many times as they wanted, unless they're limited to a number of guests, in which case we could specify that in this area, and once they hit that limit, they won't be able to register any more guests.
I see. Okay. I don't think that would happen much, but I was just curious.
So for when you click register yourself, would that just automatically populate? Is that what happens?
Yes, it would, with any information stored in your profile.
Okay, and then if they clicked guest, they'd have to input it manually. So we can add email onto there, and make it a required field if we want to get those emails.
Exactly. And you can even, if you feel like it would be helpful, you can even look at the property section, and you'll notice there's an option where you can create prospect profiles for guest registrants. So if you want the guests to have a prospect profile created for them in your database, then you would just turn this on.
Okay, cool.
Sometimes that's helpful, but sometimes people just bring their spouses, and in which case, they wouldn't necessarily be prospects. Okay. Any other fields that you want to go ahead and add to this?
Actually, I want to go back to that. Maybe if Alexander already knows the answer to this, so I don't want to waste time. But if we did want to create this prospect profile thing, does that allow us then to immediately, email address is required to register. Does that allow us to immediately send back a thank you for attending our event kind of an email, or?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. I think I would be able to do it either way, though. Correct?
Either way,
Adrian?
okay.
So if the confirmation
I could go into
emails
the
only
registered
go to
list.
emails. Confirmation emails only. So no, you can only pull emails from profiles.
We're talking more about like after the event has happened to go back and send them, thank you for attending, here, future chapter meetings, blah, blah, blah. I could just go into the registrant list and see all of the information that was input, or I can have actual profiles and send it through the website. Correct?
Yeah, exactly. So my favorite component that we have is if you have prospect profiles created for them, you can use the advanced search tool and you can say who completed a submission of, and then maybe the Sangria event, or who did not complete a submission. And then you can search, and based on that, you can send emails. You know, you can tag your profile, use your actions drop down, select contact, bring them over into the contact center, and send them a thank you for coming email.
Will the information that people fill out as prospects give an address so that Al will be able to at some point alert us, like we have been alerted in the past if we're chapter leaders, as to who might be a prospect for our chapters? Does that make sense? In other words, yeah.
Whatever information that we want to gather, I can add into those forms and make them required, or make them not required if people don't want to add that. So I would just, do we want to make that like a standard where for every event we're also asking for address?
I think we should. So. I think that's a good idea, because we get a lot of the stuff, and we're, you know, like we slam people with way too much stuff, and they're not even geographically. So we can target it a little bit better. That's probably smarter.
Okay. I think maybe not make it required, just in case someone is uncomfortable giving out their address.
Okay.
If they're in state prison, they might not want to admit that.
One other thing that I wanted to mention, back up for just a second, anytime you add a field onto a form that's going to collect money or create an invoice, you're going to see there's this third button, Edit Payment Processor and Revenue Account. This is probably what's skipped over the most in our forms. By selecting this, you really have to set up what revenue account you want this money going into. This is super crucial, because without it, the money isn't being designated a revenue account. It's kind of just like out in no man's land. So you really want to make sure you're selecting the revenue account. And then in addition to that, we also want to make sure that our invoice line item description makes sense. So you don't want the invoice line item to say, I would like to attend the BP Sangria event. You would more so want it to say BP Sangria event pricing or fee or something like that, registration fee. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so are those revenue accounts, you might have said this before, but I forgot, do those get automatically updated since it's linked to our QuickBooks?
They are not linked to QuickBooks at all.
Okay, I have to go in that where we went last week into the financials and make new revenue accounts if I want.
Correct, but they have to literally be verbatim of what you have in QuickBooks, because if you guys ever want to export this information and import into QuickBooks, if the revenue accounts are off, the mapping will be incorrect. It'll be wrong. It's not going to link up your accounts. It's just going to create new revenue accounts in QuickBooks, which is a real pain.
Okay. That makes sense.
So the moral of the story is we want the revenue invoice line item descriptions very simple and short, so that we can easily export to QuickBooks.
No, separate things. The invoice line item on the invoice, an example of an invoice line item would be what shows up on the invoice right here. So you would want to say, will you be attending? Yes. You would want to say BP Sangria event registration fee. Because this, will you be attending? Yes. If I got this invoice, I'm like, what am I attending? Like, I don't even remember what I've registered. Like, what is this talking about? Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, that's assuming we were going to send that out to be paid, right? But a lot of times it's going to be you pay on your credit card, and we're physically not sending this invoice.
Yeah, but also these are available through people's profiles. They can go see their invoices, and so that's going to be how they go back to see what they've paid for.
Exactly.
Okay.
Or even if it doesn't get sent
directly.
Nice function. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So where was that again, where we have to change that? That is in the payment processing. And I guess this is an Alexandra thing anyway, so I don't think any of us will be doing this part. But
Yeah.
It would just be on any form field that has money connected to it. You would always want to make sure you edit payment processor and revenue account. And you can look right here at the bottom. It gives you like default payment processor. If you don't have one selected, it's always going to use the default that's already set up in the payment section of the form. But then the revenue account, it says not. And we really don't want that because you want your money accounted for somewhere. Otherwise, you're going to have this huge lump sum of like a non-designated revenue account. And you're not going to know what's bringing you in money. You're not going to know, you know what I mean? So like on the home page, one of the cool features or one of the cool dashboards we have is this revenue account filter. So we can look at how much, see, we've got no revenue account, $15. So that's a test, but like in the future, we don't want that to happen. We want to know exactly where the money's going to. So we could look at sponsorship. We can apply that filter, and this graph will adjust. And then it also will, they'll also filter into the transaction report. So when you pull a transaction report, you want to know where your money's going. So we've got all these revenue accounts in the transaction report that you'd want to be able to view.
Got it.
Okay. What other questions have you had when you've been in the forums?
I don't think on my end that I had any more.
So,
I think it was just a pricing thing.
Okay, so the summary section, you can always turn that on. This will allow your members to review the fields that you've asked them. And then, so they can kind of go back through the information they provided. The payment section you'll always have to set up. So you'll always need to make sure MULA is chosen. If your members can pay later with an invoice, you would toggle this on. If they have to pay at time of registration, you would leave this toggled off.
Okay.
And then the invoice template's another biggie. So like this is something that you still need to complete in the system, I think. So you need to have an events invoice template. Even if they have to pay, do you remember us talking about invoice templates?
Yeah, I went in and did that new member one, but I haven't done the rest.
So you'll definitely want an event since you have so many events going on. And even if they have to pay at time of registration, you still want them to get a payment confirmation email, which you would also set up in the invoice template.
Okay.
And then lastly, just something else to look at, the confirmation section. So when they submit the form, they're going to see this confirmation page, and it can say, obviously, thank you, your form has been submitted successfully, but you might want to make it a little bit more specific. So if you do, you're going to want to edit the confirmation page and update the info in here. This piece is really cool, but if we go into the confirmation section properties, there's also a confirmation email that you can set up. I think this is like one of the coolest tools that we have, and the reason why is because when you turn this on, you can edit the confirmation email, and you'll notice at the top of here, you can BCC recipients. So if you wanted to BCC each of the chapter directors on these emails to let them know who's registered, then you can just add BCCs. There can be multiple, so you and a chapter member or chapter director could be in here. And then the reason this is so helpful is if you add the merge data tool, or if you use the merge data tool, you can bring in their name, their, any of the fields that they fill out, as well as any of these system fields, like any of the invoice fields. And so it'll pull it from that form, and whoever's BCC'd, when they get this in their personal email, they'll see, okay, Alexandra registered for this event. She says she's coming. She's paid the $15. And, oops. Well, there we go. And she is saying she's attending. And so then you don't have to come into the MemberClick system every day to check, who's registered. You can see it right from your personal inbox, which I think is a really great tool.
Okay. I have a question. I just remembered another question. And Ken and Todd, you might need to clarify for me. gotten a lot of questions about whether the guest list is going to be visible to, is that supposed to be visible to everyone, or?
Oh yeah, I would like to have that visible to everybody.
I don't have a problem with that either.
Because
Okay.
people like to go and they see like who's coming, and that kind of generates buzz. So that, I think it really should be a public view if that's possible.
Yeah, so Adrian, is there a way to make that registrant list viewable to the public?
There's not. The only way you could go about doing that is exporting it and then linking that Excel document somewhere on the website.
Okay.
You can't like make it display.
And actually, if there's more information that you need to answer that question, I don't want to interrupt that, but I do have a related question, because sometimes if we're, let's say my chapter is having an event and I have someone who's helping me like order bagels or coffee, and they want to know how many people are coming, and it's, say, a few days before the event, am I the only person who's going to be able to go in and tell them what the count is, or will anybody be able to access, at least to see who the number of registrants are?
So that information is only viewable on the back end.
Okay.
So anybody that has administrative accesses can view it. Otherwise, that would be it.
Okay, got you.
And so then, yeah, I mean, we could create a profile list. So like, Alexandra, you could use the advanced search tool, search by form submissions, who completed a submission of, and then maybe the chapter meeting. And we could search these individuals, tag them, save this profile list. So you could call this something, and then you can actually link profile list to the front end of the site. The only thing is this isn't dynamic. So
that's a pain.
Since it's not dynamic, you'd have to update it every time. So I feel like it would be just as easy to just download the Excel file and then make it viewable on the front end by linking the document. You could even send it out in email if you wanted.
That's not going to be.
So, yeah, I can't think off the top of my head of a good fix for this. Yeah,
just out of curiosity, Adrian, are there things that you guys are always developing to add? Like, is there, as member organization, I mean, all you do is member organization events. Like, I feel like that is something that's so, I mean, like Evite, one of the powers of Evite and all these other things is people want to go, like, people like to see who else is coming, I feel like that's a useful for member organizations to see who else is RSVP'd and who else is coming. Like, I feel like that's a useful little tool that a lot of groups would like.
Yeah, so we have like a prod. So I have an area where I can put like product update suggestions, and if it's already in there, I can kind of in a way like thumbs up it, which puts it higher up on our list. I've honestly never heard that feedback, but that doesn't mean that one of my other coworkers has it right. So I'm going to write that down, and I can definitely add that as a suggestion for something, so that we can have it on our roadmap.
Yeah, I just think, I'm part of a lot of groups, I lead a lot of groups, and I just know when you can see who's coming, that generates more buzz, and versus when it's closed, when you can't see.
Mm-hmm.
Adrian, there's no way to link, you know how in the profile list I can save a search? And that's dynamic, is there a way to link that search?
That's what I was just thinking, and there's not.
Okay. So what is that directory search option?
So that would be for like an actual directory search where people can search by attribute.
Okay, I see.
You know what I mean? So there's no, and that's what I was wondering, and I'm wondering if maybe even you could create circles, and then people could have these discussions in those circles.
But would people have to go in and say, yes, I'm going on the circle, or would that be automatically populated?
Right, they would have to, it would have to be a discussion. It wouldn't be automatically populated.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not.
Here's my.
Okay, well, we don't need to spend a ton of time on it.
Here's what you were looking for, Alexandra. So, but the only problem, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I got excited. The only, so we have search criteria or profile list. And so we could create a menu item that would link to that. So if we went to our profile list, if we created, I'm going to start by untagging, we would just do advanced search, and we would just search by form submission, who completed a submission of maybe that Sangria event, right? And then we would just save this criteria and call this Sangria attendance. This could actually work. Save the criteria. And then what we would do from here is go back to the menu item. We could do this in the main menu, social menu, member menu, however, quick links, wherever you want it to be placed. Maybe it's under the main menu. We would just create a new menu item. We would use a search criteria. There's that Sangria attendance. You'd have to do that for every form, but if you do it, it took me 2 seconds to set that up. And you could put it under the event calendar or make it its own menu if you want to. Put that group access and
that
save.
That can work for some of our big events at least. Like, yeah. I guess we could have something like the title of the link could be like, see who's coming or whatever, right? And then someone could click that and see who's coming to whatever.
Is there a way to make it
that
not...
could be kind of a cool workaround.
Yeah, and if we wanted to do that for chapter meetings, could we do it that it's not published so it doesn't come up on the main menu, but I can still link it to the calendar?
Member resources, maybe. Oh.
And put a link in the calendar to this menu item that takes them to that search.
The only way I'm seeing this possible to create is through a menu item, not through like an internal link. So it would have to be its own separate menu item, but you could make it a menu item of the member menu so that people have to be logged in order to see it. So you could say just like what they were, just like what you said, see who's coming to our conference, click it, and then it would take you to a list of all the people coming.
Okay, that works.
So that actually I think could work. You just get a little bit creative with kind of how that gets set up, but using the search criteria will definitely make that dynamic list so it will update automatically.
Okay, well, that could work for some stuff.
Cool, and that can also promote, some of the social community, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Just got about another minute. Any additional questions?
Alexandra, have you already figured out, like, on stuff where, like, for instance, our scholarship or our dues, where the money is not coming through the MULA thing, have you successfully done that on the forms?
The MULA just got finalized yesterday, so I have yet to go in and update everything. That's one of my tasks for today, is try to get that all set up.
Okay, so but like when people pay their dues and pay and donate to the scholarship, that goes directly to UCLA. So like we don't set up. I just want to make sure you've figured that part. Like, have you figured that part out at all? Like, or no? Is that for another day?
Well, so we're gonna have the dues. They could pay their dues through the website like before, and that'll automatically be populated and done through MULA, or they can do it through UCLA. And what happened before was I would get notifications to my email, and then I'd go in and update that on the website. Does that make sense? I'm not sure exactly what you're asking.
Well, we need to clarify with UCLA, because